Testing, testing. Okay, that's sounding pretty good. 3, 2, 1. Hello and welcome to this week of Eco Show, a show about ecology, the environment, and happenings in that space in news and research. I'm Henry. I do research stuff. I'm a grad student right now, and I'm doing the show. And today I'm wearing sunglasses because I felt like it. So I don't know how long they're going to stay on for. They're not very comfortable. But I thought I would add some visual engagement. So if you're listening, you can just imagine that I'm wearing some sporty sunglasses. I think I'm going to start going to like the thrift store each week and getting some cheap sunglasses to at least start an episode with. Okay. So we are here doing the show, doing this thing, and our animal of the week this week. So if you haven't been to the show before, welcome. We go through an animal of the week and then talk about research and then talk about the news. So there's lots of good stuff today. We got our animal of the week, and then we will talk about research, which is all from the African Journal of Ecology this week. So stay tuned for the research section. It should be interesting. It's all related to Africa, as the journal would suggest, which is a very large area to have a whole journal from, but hey, why not? And then we will move on to some good news, which we've got some great news this week. Some good things happening with animals coming back from being threatened, and also some cool examples of people making use of waste material, what we would think of waste, and making it into something useful. So stick around to find out how your trash can become a stash. Not really. I'm not going to help you make money this episode, but it could inspire you to think about waste products around you and how those may be used. So I got COVID last week, and I put the timestamps in the episode last week, and I'll do that again this week. So if you don't like the intro and you want to skip to the animal of the week, or you want to skip to research, that should all be in the description. And that's even if you're just listening to the podcast. If you look in the description, I'll put the timestamps in there. So I got COVID last week, and I didn't have very many bad symptoms, but this week I lost my taste and smell. I can really feel, though, that when I was recording last week, I had COVID and I didn't realize I did. And I can feel like my brain feels much more like it's working a lot better this week. So I'm happy to report that to myself, that this is feeling good. Or maybe it's the sunglasses. Who knows? Okay, our animal of the week this week. Animal of the week is the termite. And I was thinking of termites because there's something that everybody knows what they are, but what's really going on with termites? That's what I was thinking. And we're about to find out. Let me tell you. Okay, so the name comes from the Latin termes, which means woodworm, and influences on the name also may include the Latin word terere, which means to rub, wear, and erode. Earliest fossils are from the Cretaceous period, which is 145 to 66 million years ago. And people think they probably are from much earlier because by the time they found those fossils, there's already a lot of diversity within the number of termites they're finding. And so that would imply that they'd been around for a bit longer than that in order to come to that level of diversity. And they are detritovagous, which means they eat detritus, things like leaves and plant material. They eat wood and leaf litter. There are almost 3,000 species. And a lot of those, and it's very few of those that are actual pest species. So you think of termites, but if you run into a termite on the street, more likely than not, it's not going to cause you any problems. But it's unlikely that you'll run into it on the street because of some things we'll talk about in a moment. They evolved from cockroaches, which is definitely minus points for termites. That's some bad lineage. That's when you do Ancestry.com and you find out that you're related to a group of people or you're related to somebody that didn't have such a great past. That's what it felt like finding that termites are related to evolved from cockroaches. They've moved on. They've changed. They are, they're their own thing. They've made their own way in the world. They're not bound by their ancestors, but yeah, that is in their past. They have, and also we'll keep on talking about termites now. They have a worker caste system, sort of like what you think about with ants, and they have worker, soldier, and then kings and queens, apparently. And they are supposedly the first insects to have this sort of system. And there's evidence from 100 million years ago that they were rocking the caste system. Most of the termites in the caste system, so workers and soldiers, will be sterile, and colonies begin to form reproductively. Okay, and so the colonies will form a sexually mature individual called a king and a queen. And the cool thing about termites is that who can develop into the king or the queen is somewhat flexible. So these colonies of termites are pretty adaptable to different catastrophic events because of the developmental stage that most of the termites in the colony are at, allows them to potentially become a king or a queen. So everyone is a future king or queen in the termite world. Colonies are considered superorganisms because of the collective behavior of individuals. And I'll put one image I found was of cathedral termites, or it's called cathedral pillars or something like that in Australia. And they're these massive pillars that are made by termites. And then I'll also put a photo of these different sort of the workers and the queens and stuff like that. These groups, these colonies, can range in size from several hundred to several million individuals, and most are never seen because they will live in nests for most of their lives. So because these are detritivores, most of the time they don't really need to be out and about in the open. They're doing their thing sort of around the ground or underground, and they'll be in the nest most of the time. They are on every major landmass except for Antarctica, and they are most abundant in the tropics. So, and in the tropics, they constitute 10% of the biomass. So I'm pretty sure that means of all the trees, of all the plants, of everything in the tropics, everything that's living, termites compose 10% of that. Which makes sense when you think of all the different animals like anteaters that are specially designed to be able to eat ants. Oh no. Anteaters aren't for termites. They're for ants. Dang it. Oh man. Well, I don't know what I'm talking about there, but I imagine that some anteaters are pretty well suited to eat termites. You've definitely seen videos, or I'll put an image here of chimpanzees fishing for termites with sticks. So they'll stick sticks into termite colony things. So we've said they are big decomposers, and they're ecosystem engineers that help impact soil characteristics. So they can help soil by improving hydrology, by aerating the soil and allowing for the movement of water through soil. They decompose things, they cycle nutrients, and improve vegetation growth. We've said they're famous for causing structural issues in houses, but most are not harmful. But unfortunately, the damaging ones are expected to spread due to climate change, and that is because they have it kind of sounds like they have a soft body, so they're not able to tolerate the cold very well. So as places get warmer, their ranges can expand. So if you're in a cold area and you don't want termites in your zone, then it's time to get serious about climate change. What else have we got here? Yeah, they're expected to change. The 3 different types are called dampwood, drywood, and subterranean termites. Dampwood termites are only in coniferous forest. Drywood ones are in hardwood forests, and the subterranean are diverse and are able to be in a wider variety of places. And talking about the size of them, queens can get massive. They can be up to 10 centimeters, which is about 4 inches long. So that's about maybe that big or something. Maybe a little bit. Around about that. But most of the ones that are doing the rest of the stuff will be 4 to 15 millimeters. So that's very tiny. Most workers are blind, but they use antenna to be able to pick up on scents and different things. I could use some antenna right now because I don't have smell anymore due to COVID. I think it's meant to last for a while, but we'll find out how long it goes for. And workers and soldiers, they pretty much just do what it says on the tin. Workers are out there eating things, building things, and an interesting note about soldiers is that some soldiers they have bigger heads, so they're able to block the entrances to the inner workings of these termite nests with their heads if they're trying to stop intruders, because there are many things that like to eat them, so they gotta have soldiers to keep them from getting eaten. And this is also wild, is queens can live for up to 30 to 50 years, which is just mind-blowing to me. I had no idea that an insect could live up to that long. Okay. And they're also of interest for research because their guts have wild enzymes that can produce hydrogen. So the gut could be of use for any energy production, and there are lots of questions about the enzymes in their guts that allow them to break down all this different sort of plant material, things like that. I can't smell, but I'm still getting sneezy from this microphone. Outrageous. If I was going to lose smell, then I should lose allergies as well. Oh well. Let's see. And final cool note. Oh, very cool note. Is that a shopping center was designed off of a termite mound because the termite mound had passive cooling attributes. So they've been doing their thing, making mounds for hundreds of millions of years, and it makes sense to take some inspiration from that whole dealio. Okay, that's it for the termites. Termite section is done. And now we're moving on to our science section, which is the African Journal of Ecology today. And we have a wide variety of articles. They're all pretty animal related. Our first, and they're not too long. Most of these are pretty straightforward. I should be able to not be as confusing as last week. We had our first research article is by Emmanuel Acquah et al. And they were looking at some questions related to big flagship species in the Bomfobiri Wildlife Sanctuary, which is in Kumawu, Ghana. And we'll put a photo of Ghana in this place here on the map, putting it on the map. So they've got some big species like buffalo, hog, baboon, duiker, and crocs in this place. And they mapped the presence of these to help inform ecotourism. So very important to know if you want to have a popular ecotourism space, it's important to know where your species are going to be. that people are coming to see in the first place. They found, by mapping species presence in different areas of the park, that human disturbances are having a big impact on species presence, and that most species are being found in riverine, which is river areas, and forest areas. So they were calling to have some increased patrols going on to decrease the impacts of people coming in and messing around, and also to construct some viewing platforms and hiking trails to improve development. And that was making me curious, is how common is it for there to be hiking trails in parks like this? Because even baboon, I don't think I would want to be. We've talked about baboons before, and I don't think I would want to be just hiking around with baboons. But I imagine that hogs kind of keep to themselves, and buffalo wouldn't be too bad, but all these folks are pretty big. So, cool article just mapping species presence on the landscape, seeing where things are at, and using that to inform development of ecotourism. So kudos for that. The title of that article was Effects of Environmental Factors on the Distribution of Flagship Species in Bomfobiri Wildlife Sanctuary, Kumawu, Ghana, Implications for Conservation and Ecotourism Development. Okay. Easy to the point. We got through that totally fine. There was no confusion whatsoever, and we're already moving on. And we're going to be talking now about the feeding ecology of vulnerable aoudad, species name Ammotragus lervia, in northwestern Sahara. And this is by Farid Bounaceur et al. And the names of these articles and their authors will be in the description, because I am very sure that I am likely to be pronouncing much of this very incorrectly. But we're spreading the word anyways. And that was actually the title of this. So what is an aoudad, you may be asking? I also asked that question, and it looks like a goat. I'll say that. It's got some very cool horns going on, but it's pretty much a goat. And this article is looking at the feeding ecology. So what's it eating? Where is it eating? What are the distributions of species of plants that this thing is eating? And how did they find this out? By looking at its poo. And they found that it mostly eats forbs. And forbs are, I need to look up what the definition of forbs are. I know what forbs are, but I don't have a good definition of forbs. Not Forbes like the magazine, the much better forbs. Okay, according to Wikipedia, a forb is a herbaceous flowering plant that is not a graminoid. The term is used in biology and vegetation ecology, especially in relation to grasslands. And understory. Typically, these are dicots without woody stems. And when I click on images for this, I get Forbes, the frickin' magazine. Outrageous. Forbes plant. I'm Googling that image now. Okay, and the photo that I get is basically like a daisy, echinacea, these sorts of things. So forbs mean different things to different people, but you can sort of think of flowering plants and grasslands is what we can think about. And these tend to be pretty nutritionally dense. So these are preferred by the aoudad. And there was a mixture of other things that it eats, so it's kind of a generalist. but it does really like these nutritionally dense forbs. And this is important to understand because if you can look at something's poo and you see where it is eating, what it's eating, then you may understand where it needs to be if there's things that are spatially limited. So like if someone is to be looking at my entrails, I don't know if entrails is the right word, they would say, hey, maybe this creature, an important habitat for this creature is the gas station because of all of the hot Cheetos that we found in here. And so they might make a little protected area in the gas station for me so I could make sure that I had habitat to eat things in there. But here's the thing. Forbs are palatable to lots of things. And so there are lots of other competition in the area from other grazing animals that are more of a crop animal in these regions. So that's what they're pointing it out. So threats to the aoudad include habitat destruction and human development and expansion of other species that are being used to graze areas that it eats. So they recommend some more habitat protection, which is always lovely, and also livestock control because livestock will eat these plants that are palatable to the aoudad. So just some good basic research there, looking at its diet, what it eats, and using that information to inform how to protect a species. Good, basic, clean ecology research, which we love to see. Okay. On to our, and did I say the title? Yeah, I read the title of that in the author. Our next article, we're halfway through. I think we've only got 4. No, we have 5. We have 5 articles today. So I'm moving and grooving it through it. But these are all nice, easy to the point. And I'm not going to read the title for this one because it gives it away. But the author is Josephine B. Smit et al. And what they did was they used camera traps, which are just cameras that are placed in areas and are triggered by movement and things like that. They were using camera traps to see how elephants respond to human risks. And what are these human risks? You may be thinking the human risks are poaching. And so they grouped areas into high or low risk based on the evidence of poaching in the area. So there will be carcasses out and about and things like that, and pretty high rates of poaching in this ecosystem, which is the Ruaha-Rungwa ecosystem in Tanzania. And let's see. So they were looking to see where are these areas of high risk, and then looking at what are the activities of elephants in these high risk areas. Are they changing their behavior, the way they are interacting with the local environment due to the threat of these risks? And as you can probably guess, there was impacted behavior, and they had impacts in all areas of their life. So the period where they're active, whether they're more active in the day or the night, was impacted. So areas that were risky. They weren't as active during the day. They were more active at nighttime. They avoided use of roads and water sources. And there was different social associations and behavior. So definitely these risky areas, these really dangerous areas for them are impacting their behavior and their activity. And so again, this is important to look at species and its behavior and the impact of that based on the landscape situation. But it wasn't just that it was roads or things like that they're freaked out about. Is that these areas that have a risk of poaching are making them change their activities. So there's some beneficial findings in that if they feel safe in particular areas, even if there is human influence around, there may not be huge, big social implications. But in these areas where it's risky for them, there are going to be some negative impacts. So good to understand that. And let's see. Yeah, there were fewer relaxed behaviors at high-risk sites. So we know that being in a relaxed state is beneficial for various different things, for your own health and stress hormones and things like that. So it's important to have stress every once in a while, but you don't want to be having your elephants too stressed. You want a bunch of happy elephants. So that's pretty much the finding of this one, is that in areas where there's risk of poaching, the elephants are clued into that and they are changing their behavior in those areas. And this can help in understanding of elephant social interaction, some good basic research about elephant behavior, and how there's sort of these layered impacts of poaching on them. This isn't, poaching is a bummer, but I'm sure, it's a complex issue. I'm not saying I'm pro poaching, but, hanging on poachers is kind of, it's a global thing, right? Demand in places for these things, and then poverty in these regions making it in many cases, I'm sure, one of the only options to not only just, to survive in some cases, I'm sure. So unfortunate, but cool that this research is being done. And the title of it was Anthropogenic Risk Increases Nighttime Activities and Associations in African Elephants. Species name Loxodonta africana in the Ruaha-Rungwa ecosystem, Tanzania. Okay, and like that, we're already halfway through our articles for today. Keeping it related to animals, we are now talking about the marabou stork, species name Leptoptilos crumenifer. I'm not sure the accent that you should be speaking Latin in. What would the Romans, what would their accent have sounded like? I do wonder. And this was by Jonah Gula and Clive R. Barlow. Know it all. It's these two folks against the world, bringing some good research on stork. And so this stork, the marabou stork, which I'll put an image of, is widespread and abundant in East and Southern Africa. And so they're pretty much saying it's pretty much all over the place. It's a common species. But in Western Africa, the population is in some pretty bad decline, and there hasn't been a whole lot of research keeping track of these folks. And they have found an estimated, so they did a literature review to find this information, and they are estimating that there's been a 54% range loss and an extirpation of 64% of nesting colonies. And extirpation just means getting rid of, since 2000. So half of the range has been lost just since 2000, and 64% of nesting colonies lost. And so they're estimating there may not be more than 100 breeding pairs left. And the overall cause, they're saying, is likely due to less rainfall, which can be tied to climate change, and agricultural expansion probably being the major one. So when you're expanding agriculture, you're usually either cutting down forest or you are draining wetland. That tends to be the way that the major ecosystems that are converted for this sort of thing. And stork tend to like wetlands. So they did point out that it can be, you can look at how maybe you can do rice paddies, rice fields in a way that can be positive for storks, but they basically were doing this to raise the alarm that these storks are not looking good. They are abundant in other areas around the country, which I'm curious. I wonder why. I imagine it's probably because there is maybe there's been more development out to the west in recent years. So I wonder why the storks aren't doing as well. You can put your ideas below about why the storks aren't doing as well. I have a feeling that it is just that there's big expansion of agriculture, maybe not as well sort of adapted to thinking about how to live with humans or something like that. I'm not sure. But there's a lot of development going on, and it's having a negative impact on the stork. So the title of this was Decline of the Marabou Stork in West Africa and the Need for Immediate Conservation Action. So here's hoping that there can be some conservation action going on out there in a way that is able to also allow people to have their livelihoods, because at the end of the day, when it's people's livelihoods versus the animal ranges, you're not going to stop people from doing development development might not be the right word, but you're not going to stop people from doing this sort of thing if they need it to survive. So this is why ecology is a very multidisciplinary activity, especially when it comes to conservation and all these sorts of things. Okay, and our last research article of today is a area that's warm to my heart, and it relates to our elephants from before. It's about crop raiding and baboons and elephants. Baboons are coming to be one of my favorite animals. I just love that they're just kind of out there doing whatever they're going to do. I don't feel great for the people that are having to deal with it. And I'm sure if I was living around baboons, I would be, having some more concerns, especially as we'll find in this article. But it is pretty funny from afar, thinking about it sometimes. Anyhow, so this article is looking at crop raiding by elephants and baboons around Kibale National Park. And this article is by Anna Muchwampaka Kyokuhaire et al. And so we have some background. In Africa, many protected forests in densely human-dominated landscapes. Okay, so when you have protected forests in heavily human-dominated landscapes, there's going to be a lot of human-wildlife conflict, and it's going to be intense. We've talked about this before. Baboons are comfortable in some human settlements, but elephants are clued into it too. Elephants are smart. And when you've got lots of dense human development around these national parks, you're going to have a lot of crops being grown there. So if you're a baboon or you're any sort of animal and you're in you're in a national park, which is cool, but it's like being you're hanging out at the park and then you've got the grocery market right next to it. Like, yeah, sure, you can find some nuts from the tree, but I mean, come on. You've got the supermarket right there, so you're going to want to go over and get some stuff from it. So this was sort of a problem that you don't think of that often when you're thinking about, you should conserve different places and whatnot. And in lots of cases, I usually think of it as being a positive thing to have conservation areas and there being positive benefits to the area around for biodiversity and things like this. But those animals that you're trying to protect then are going to be saying, hey, you've got some pretty good crops looking there. So they were doing sort of a sociological survey of a sociological and spatial study of the impacts on people's crops being close to the national park. And they were looking at farmer perceptions and responses to crop raiding from wildlife, and mostly it's baboons and elephants. There is financial loss. The financial loss is the same from both baboons and elephants, but people perceived elephants as being more damaging. And they have been using guarding and trenches to try and prevent animals from coming for their crops. They also found that that households that were headed by women or older adults were more vulnerable and suffered greater economic losses because they're describing some of the necessary deterrent as being guarding. And so it sounds like there were some issues with that. And the impact is also a factor of income and distance from the park. So if you're wealthier, you can afford to guard your place better, pay for people to guard your place, or build these trenches and things. And if you're farther away from the park, you're going to have less of an impact because these guys you're going to go to the close supermarket. If you got the supermarket right next to the park, or are you going to go to the supermarket down the street? I'm going to go to the one that's close by. Unless the one that's further has hot Cheetos and the close one doesn't, then I'm going for that second park, that second supermarket. Okay, and their sort of call to action at the end of this article was to bring more awareness to this cost distribution issue and how that impacts people's ability to prevent crop raiding by these different animals. So that is important to do and to understand for this problem. And I'm just going to check, make sure we're still recording. One moment, please. Okay. And we're back. The thing is still recording, which is nice to know. So all of this has been taken down, and that's the research for today. So we had a lot of research today, but it all had a melange. It had a particular flow to it. So hopefully that was mentally engaging enough to stick around. If it wasn't, then okay. Then we've got some good news now. So here's my marker for the good news section over my face. We have got the first article is, or the first piece of good news is that Spirit Mountain, known as Aviqua Ame, is been designated a new national monument in the United States. It is a sacred area on the Fort Mojave Reservation, and it is at the confluence of the Mojave and Sonoran deserts. And this is 500,000 acres. So I'll put an image of this place here. Those deserts are really special, beautiful places. So good to hear that this was done, especially when we had things like the Willow Project the past few weeks that got approved. So no, it's good to acknowledge the good news, because there's a lot of good stuff going on a lot of the time, but it just doesn't get in the news because it doesn't get as much like engagement and stuff like that. So, I understand if you're a company that is selling the news and you gotta sell what people are eating up. I get that, but it is unfortunate that we miss out on good news sometime. Okay, so that's good. What else have we got? This is the news/good news section. So sometimes there's just regular news, but this week it's just good news, I'm pretty sure. So this next one, a critically endangered West African lion is going from strength to strength in Nyokolo Koba, Senegal. And in this area, there were just 10 individuals, and now it's up to 15 to 40. And they have good genetic diversity as well. So there's this West African lion that is doing well. This population is doing well and coming back. So that is some good news for this, because when you lose a species and you lose the DNA, it's not only bad that you're losing that, but the whole population of lions is then, or any species is then losing that genetic diversity, which allows everything to be more durable to changes. Okay, and here's the hook at the start of the episode. It felt like it was so soon, the start of this episode, but then when I looked at the time, it's been quite a long time. So hopefully it's felt that quick for you. Anyways, there's an Indian startup which is using rice crop waste to make biodegradable foam packaging instead of burning it. So each year there's millions of rice stalk which get burnt, but now they have found a way to use that rice stalk to make a sort of polystyrene thing that will take its place, and it's biodegradable. And it's how they use some sort of mycelium, so some sort of fungus to connect this rice crop together, and they bake it, and that makes it all interconnected. And this was cute. Apparently the inspiration came because one of the founders of this, his kid was drawing, when they were doing drawings of the city, like little kids drawing, they always drew the sky gray. And he asked his kid why, and the kid was like, dude, because the sky is gray all the time. And apparently, because he didn't say it like that, and apparently this is because the skies will go gray in particular regions from burning rice stalk, because you've got it. Farmers who've got the rice stalk left over, you got to do something with it, so you burn it. I'll put a photo here, which just shows the extent of the smoke from this burning rice stalk. And they are producing 20 metric tons of product each month. So that's 20 metric tons of product that's not going into the atmosphere. Very cool. And yeah, this map looks, that's a lot of smoke, Okay. I think we just got one more piece of good news. What's this? Okay, Switzerland is looking to roll out solar panels between railway tracks, which would be a world first. It's estimated to cover 2% of gross annual energy use for Switzerland. And they think that 50% of world railways can use this system. There's some possible issues that folks are raising, which include visual blinding for drivers, dust accumulation, and snow, but they say they've thought of it all, and that you can put brushes on the bottom of rail cars that would keep it clean. So that would be a very cool thing. But I also wonder if you could just, oh no, I don't really know. But anyways, that could be an interesting thing to do. Switzerland has got, I guess, an opportunity to do this thing there. And it seems like they would get broken pretty quickly, but, anything is worth a try to save some energy. So that's about the news for this week. That's the research, and that is the animal of the week. So thank you for stopping in this week. I hope you're having a fabulous week, and we will catch you next time. See ya.